Have you ever imagined what happens when a country decides to build trucks not for highways but to carry missiles, radar systems, tanks, bridges, fuel, and even entire rolling cities of war? In the Soviet Union and later in Russia, a military truck was never just a truck. It was a tool of survival, intimidation, and presence. Giant, heavy, loud machines built to cross mud, snow, swamps, and destroyed terrain, as if that was simply part of the mission. Some of these monsters looked more like land ships than vehicles. Others were built to carry weapon systems so important that their appearance alone could change the tension along an entire border. Are you ready to discover the biggest and most extravagant military trucks Russia has ever put on the ground? Then stay with me until the end, because the number one on this list is so massive that it feels like it was built to prove one thing for the Russians. Limits were just another design detail. Kamaz 538. Before the massive launchers and the trucks built to carry missiles, there were machines designed to prepare the way. The Kamaz 538 was born in the Soviet Union, developed by the Minsk factory in the 1960s as a heavy military engineering tractor. It was not built to cruise down a highway. It was built to push, level, clear, and open paths through terrain where ordinary vehicles would get stuck. Under that wide and brutal body, it used a diesel V12 engine of about 38.9 liters, with 12 cylinders and roughly 375 horsepower. Its top speed was around 28 miles per hour, and a 0 to 60 time simply made no sense for this kind of machine. It was not built for speed. It was built for low-end force, slow control, and hard labor. The transmission was manual, with gearing focused on traction and control, ideal for moving slowly while pushing blades, equipment, and loads in military environments. It had 4x4 drive, huge tires, reinforced suspension, and a structure prepared to face mud, snow, uneven ground, and improvised bases. Visually, the Kamaz 538 looked like a mix between a military truck and an earth-moving machine. Wide, heavy, noisy, and intimidating. It gave off that classic Soviet feeling. No luxury, just plenty of steel. The deep growl of the diesel V12 matched its job perfectly, working where the ground itself almost became the enemy. It was used in engineering operations, runway preparation, base support, and movement through difficult areas. It is not the most famous truck on this list, but without machines like this, many larger vehicles would never even reach their operating positions. And if this one already looked like a field monster, the next machine takes us into the world of giant military heavy haulers. Kamaz 537. Now we enter a category that deeply shaped Soviet military logistics: heavy-duty military tractors. The Kamaz 537 began appearing in the late 1950s and early 1960s, produced by the Minsk factory in the former Soviet Union. Its mission was to transport tanks, military systems, special semi-trailers, and equipment that only a handful of trucks could move. It used a diesel V12 engine of about 38.9 liters, with 12 cylinders and around 525 horsepower. Top speed was close to 34 to 37 miles per hour, depending on the load, and a 0 to 60 time was not a practical reference. This truck was made to drag tons of equipment, not to launch quickly from a stoplight. In several versions, the transmission was hydromechanical automatic, designed to handle heavy effort without forcing the driver to shift constantly. The drivetrain was 8x8, with 8 driven wheels pulling the vehicle through mud, snow, and broken roads. The suspension was tough, built to handle weight, vibration, and harsh military use. Up close, the Kamaz 537 looked like a fortress on tires. Its forward cab, huge fenders, and low wide stance gave it a powerful presence. The sound of the diesel V12 was deep and constant, the kind of engine note you would feel through the ground before the truck even came into view. It was used to tow tanks, transport strategic equipment, and support large-scale military movements. Over the years, it became a symbol of Soviet heavy transport engineering, appearing for decades in convoys, bases, and operations where strength mattered more than comfort. If the Kamaz 538 prepared the path, the Kamaz 537 showed what it meant to carry a war on its back. ZIL-135. Not every military giant impresses only because of its size. Some stand out because they seem to have been designed completely outside the usual rules, and the ZIL-135 is exactly that kind of machine. Developed by ZIL in the Soviet Union during the 1950s and 1960s, it became especially famous as a base for rocket launchers and high-mobility military systems. Its mechanical layout was unusual. The ZIL-135 used two gasoline V8 engines, each with 8 cylinders, producing around 360 horsepower combined, depending on the configuration. Each engine could drive one side of the vehicle, an uncommon solution, but one meant to keep the truck moving in difficult terrain. Top speed was close to 40 miles per hour, and a 0 to 60 time was not published because its job was tactical mobility, not road performance. The transmission varied depending on the version, but the whole system was designed for military use, with a complex and rugged drivetrain. It had 8x8 drive, large tires, and a setup prepared for poor ground, snow, mud, and areas with no roads at all. Independent suspension helped the truck keep contact with the terrain, even on rough surfaces. It was used in versions connected to rocket systems, military transport, and special applications. One of its most memorable traits was that two-engine layout. It may sound excessive, but within Soviet engineering logic, it made sense. Keep the vehicle moving, even when conditions became extreme. And if this one already seems strange and powerful, the next machine takes off-road design to an even rarer level. ZIL E-167. Some vehicles seem to be born just to prove that certain terrain can be beaten by pure force. The ZIL E-167 was a Soviet prototype developed by ZIL in the early 1960s, created to take on deep snow, heavy mud, soaked ground, and regions where ordinary trucks simply had no chance of moving forward. Its mechanics were just as unusual as its appearance. The ZIL E-167 used two gasoline V8 engines, with 8 cylinders each, producing around 360 horsepower combined. Top speed was around 47 miles per hour in good conditions, but its true purpose was not speed. It was to keep moving when the ground tried to swallow everything. The transmission was built for military use, with a setup focused on control, power, and low-speed movement. It had 6x6 drive and 6 enormous low-pressure tires designed to spread the vehicle's weight across snow, sand, and mud. That solution helped keep it from sinking easily, which was essential in the remote and freezing regions of the former Soviet Union. Visually, the ZIL E-167 looked like an experimental polar machine. Tall, long, wide, and fitted with giant tires, it had a rare presence even by Soviet standards. The simple cab and functional body made it clear that the focus was the mission, not comfort. The sound of both engines working together must have turned any crossing into a scene impossible to ignore. Before we move on to the next giant, if you are enjoying this journey through some of the most outrageous military machines ever built, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. It never entered mass production, but it left an important legacy as a mobility testbed. Many of the solutions tested on it helped engineers better understand how to move heavy vehicles through deep snow, mud, and isolated regions. And when a prototype already looks this extreme, the next machine shows what happens when that kind of force starts towing even heavier strategic loads. KZ-KT-7428. Instead of grabbing attention through pure weirdness, the KZ-KT-7428 impressed through its purpose, moving absurd weight with the presence of a modern war truck. It was developed in the former Soviet Union by the Kurgan factory as a successor to earlier heavy military tractors used to transport tanks, heavy systems, and strategic equipment. Its role was to bring mobility to loads so heavy they seemed almost unwilling to move. Its engine was a large displacement diesel V12 with 12 cylinders and around 650 horsepower in known versions. That was more than enough power to tow enormous combinations, often reaching many dozens of tons when attached to military semi-trailers. Top speed was close to 40 miles per hour, depending on the load. and a 0 to 60 time was not a realistic measurement for this type of heavy tractor. The transmission was hydromechanical automatic, built to handle high torque and reduce the driver's workload during heavy operations. The drivetrain was 8x8, with all wheels working to keep the truck moving through mud, snow, poor roads, and military movement areas. The suspension was reinforced, focused on durability, stability, and load capacity. The KZ DT-30 looked more modern and more threatening than the older Soviet tractors. A large cab, high chassis, huge tires, and the stance of a vehicle built to pull a tank without asking permission. Inside, the environment was functional, with simple controls and total focus on the mission, something very typical of Russian military vehicles. It was used mainly as a heavy tractor for transporting armored vehicles and large military loads. In many convoys, it was the kind of machine that revealed the scale of the operation before any armored vehicle even appeared. And if this giant already looked ready to drag half a battalion behind it, the next one enters the territory of trucks built to carry systems capable of changing the direction of a war. MAZ 543. From here, the list starts entering a much more symbolic zone. The MAZ 543 appeared in the Soviet Union in the 1960s, developed by the Minsk factory to carry heavy military systems, especially missile launchers. It was not just a big truck. It was a mobile platform designed to carry strategic power across roads, fields, and difficult terrain. Its engine was a diesel V12 of about 38.9 liters, with 12 cylinders and around 525 horsepower. In some versions, top speed was close to 37 miles per hour, depending on the load being carried. A 0 to 60 time was not relevant because this vehicle carried enormous loads, often connected to weapons, radar systems, and support equipment. The transmission was hydromechanical automatic, an important solution for moving a vehicle of this size with better control. The drivetrain was 8x8, with all wheels helping push the vehicle through mud, snow, dirt roads, and improvised military routes. Independent wheel suspension was reinforced to handle high weight and maintain stability, even with long and heavy loads. The look of the MAZ 543 is one of the most recognizable in Soviet engineering. Its cab was split into two sections, one on each side of the chassis, leaving space in the middle for long loads such as launchers and special equipment. That design gave the truck a unique appearance, as if it had been built around the mission instead of around driver comfort. It became famous as the base for missile launchers and special military support vehicles. It also appeared in parades and historic footage that helped build its reputation as a strategic machine. When a MAZ 543 rolled by, it did not look like it was just carrying equipment. It looked like it was carrying a message. And if the MAZ 543 already impresses with its look and mission, the next machine takes that same heavy platform idea and turns it into something even more extravagant. 9K714 Soviet Oka. Now we move into a machine with much greater historical weight. The 9K714 Soviet Oka was a Soviet tactical ballistic missile system developed in the 1970s and adopted in the 1980s. Its mobile platform turned the whole system into a threat that was difficult to locate because it could move, prepare for launch, and change position quickly. The launcher used a heavy 8x8 vehicle built to carry the missile, control equipment, and the entire launch system. In public sources, technical data varies depending on the version, but the focus was mobility, stability, and durability. Top speed was close to 37 miles per hour on road, with performance built around military operations, not acceleration. The transmission was heavy-duty, with a configuration focused on strength and control. Full 8x8 drive allowed it to leave predictable routes and move through rural areas, mud, snow, and improvised paths. Reinforced suspension helped keep a tall, heavy, and sensitive system stable. Visually, the Oka commanded respect as a complete system. It was not just a large truck. It was a mobile launcher carrying a missile on its structure. It gained major relevance during the Cold War and later became associated with disarmament agreements, which only increased its historical importance. And if this one already felt highly strategic, the next vehicle shows a completely different kind of strength. moving forward where roads do not even exist. Vityaz DT-30. Few Russian military vehicles have a presence as different as the Vityaz DT-30. Produced by the Vityaz machine building company, it was created to operate in extreme regions such as the Arctic, tundra, deep snow, swamps, and fragile ground. Where wheeled trucks sank, broke the surface, or simply could not spread their weight properly, this machine kept moving on tracks. The DT-30 uses a diesel V12 engine of about 38.9 liters, with 12 cylinders and around 710 horsepower in known versions. Top speed is close to 23 miles per hour on land and lower when operating in water. A 0 to 60 time does not apply, because this machine was built to carry up to around 30 tons at low speed, with constant force and absolute control over bad terrain. The transmission is hydromechanical automatic, prepared to deliver continuous power to the tracks without harsh shifting. Its structure is articulated in two modules, almost like two vehicles working together. That articulation allows it to follow the terrain better, climb over uneven ground, cross deep mud, soft snow, flooded areas, and even waterways, while keeping cargo and crew moving. Visually, the Vityaz DT-30 looks like a short combat train. Long, split into two sections, fitted with wide tracks and a functional cab. It gives the impression of an unstoppable puller machine. The sound of the heavy diesel engine, mixed with the noise of the tracks crushing snow and mud, creates a slow, brutal, dominant presence. It has been used for military transport, logistic support, rescue, exploration, and remote operations in the far north. Its greatest advantage was solving a problem few vehicles could face, carrying heavy loads where there were no roads, no bridges, and no firm ground. In frozen regions, this kind of mobility was not a luxury. It was operational survival. Over time, the DT-30 became a symbol of Russia's ability to operate in extreme environments. It does not impress because of speed. It impresses because of its mechanical stubbornness, its ability to keep going where almost everything else stops. And if the DT-30 already feels extreme, the final machine on this list takes Russian military trucks into a more modern and intimidating scale. Kamaz 7850. To close the list, we arrive at a modern giant of Russian military engineering. The Kamaz 7850 was developed as part of the Platforma O family, a project created to transport heavy strategic systems on wheels. It was born with a very clear mission: replace older Soviet platforms and give Russia its own base for moving extremely valuable military equipment. Its size is already impressive from a distance. The Kamaz 7850 is a 16 by 16 vehicle with 8 axles and 16 driven wheels, a configuration designed to distribute weight more effectively and maintain mobility even while carrying enormous structures. Publicly released data points to a high-powered diesel system producing around 850 horsepower, connected to an electric transmission system that distributes force to the wheels in a more controlled way. Top speed is around 37 miles per hour, depending on load and terrain. A 0 to 60 time does not apply to a platform of this size, because the goal here is not acceleration. The goal is to move strategic weight with stability. Independent suspension helps the truck handle uneven ground, while 16 by 16 all-wheel drive gives it the ability to push forward through terrain where conventional trucks would simply fall behind. It looks like a mobile military base. Long, wide, tall, and full of presence, the Kamaz 7850 gives the impression of a wall rolling on tires. When it appears carrying military equipment, it becomes clear that every part of the design was built to support weight, maintain control, and operate in missions where reliability matters more than comfort. Its biggest impact is what it represents. The Kamaz 7850 is not just another large truck. It symbolizes Russia's attempt to create a new generation of heavy platforms with its own technology. After decades of relying on designs inherited from the Soviet era, this machine reflects the search for industrial independence and modern strategic mobility, and that is why it closes the list at the top. Among all the giants we have seen, the Kamaz 7850 best represents the present and future of Russian military trucks. Huge, technological, intimidating, and built to carry power on wheels. Today, we looked at some of the biggest and most extravagant military trucks Russia and the former Soviet Union have ever put on the ground. Machines built to tow tanks, carry missiles, cross snow, fight through mud, and bring military power to places where ordinary trucks would never make it. These vehicles are not just large. They represent an era when size, durability, and mobility were part of the strategy. Every engine, every axle, and every giant tire had a clear purpose: keep the mission moving, even in the toughest terrain. Now tell me in the comments, which of these trucks impressed you the most? Had you heard of any of them before? And which one would you most like to see running in person? If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. That helps YouTube understand that this content is relevant, and show it to more people who also enjoy heavy machines and extreme military vehicles. I'll see you in the next video.